Evolution complete. This was what Ryuk opened his gaze to as he looked blankly up. The sight of a magnificent serpent brought his focus back, its embrace around his neck finally waking him up. Isha. Ryuk called to the python but soon noticed something abnormal. Right now, Isha looked absolutely bloated and heavy on his neck. Ryuk's memories finally returned as he remembered where he was. He was still in the pool, which strangely had lost the majority of its color. It seemed Isha had absorbed a vast amount of energy from the pool, causing the bloated appearance. Return back to the pet world to rest, Ryuk whispered to it. Isha gave a hiss of acknowledgement before disappearing. Raising his head, Ryuk found feet dangling above in the water. Guess I wasn't the only one who somehow made their way to the stream, Ryuk muttered as he noticed the other geniuses still present. Before he could move up, a voice rang throughout the entire area. Time up. Everyone still present in the trial will now be transported out. The voice loudly echoed through the area, and immediately, Ryuk felt the space around him shattering apart as a suctioning force overwhelmed him. It's finally ending, huh? He mused silently to himself before being instantly pulled into the black void. The same occurrence for every other genius in the pool as they all began disappearing one by one. When Ryuk opened his eyes once more, he barely landed on the ground with both legs as he looked around and found other geniuses already present. Somehow, he seemed to be the last one to exit, and strangely, every other student was staring dumbly at him. How? They all said in shock. Ryuk couldn't help but turn his gaze upward and found all the instructors narrowing their eyes at him. Turning back to himself, Ryuk quickly found the reason. And it was simple. He had grown taller and, maybe more handsome. But his mood right now was so bad he paid it no attention and simply walked back to the end of the seating area, where Quinn was already sitting, his jaw on the ground as he looked at Ryuk like he was looking at a monster. The test has come to an end, and a total of 40 of you have passed. Just as previously mentioned, a total of 20 of you failed. Only 15 of you managed to reach the end of the labyrinth and access the fallen pool. For those of you who failed, I believe you already know yourselves. Please move out of the hall and go straight to the eviction hall. You all will be leaving the Arisen Genius Hall today, the man said, his eyes holding no emotion of pity or sadness at all. Slowly, some of the geniuses began standing up, a bit of disappointment on their faces as they moved out of the hall. A total of 20. What was a bit more relaxing to Ryuk was that Quinn was still sitting beside him. For those of you that passed, which are you still remaining in your seat now, congratulations. You have passed the preliminary test and now qualify to progress to the semi-final stage. The man said as some of the geniuses heaved a huge sigh of relief. Even though some of them knew they would eventually drop out, somehow, there was still some hope left in them. My greatest congratulations still go to those who were able to find the fallen pool and bathe in it. The majority of you only passed because 20 people were dumb enough to quickly get eliminated, making you therefore pass automatically. The only ones who truly passed this test are those who reached the end and bathed in the pool, a number of just 15 people. But still, we will see how it all turns out in the next round of the test. You all have expended a total of 3 days in the fallen realm, and now you'll be given 2 days of rest before getting once more gathered in the hall. There will be no classes for the next 2 days, and you all will be free to do whatever you want. The man continued the announcement as the various students perked up their heads. But the world seemed distant to Ryuk. Even when there were murmurings around and all the instructors disappeared, and the students slowly began pouring out the doors, exhaustion written all over their faces, Ryuk's eyes still blankly looked into the distance. Until eventually, the world around him grew a silence that he felt in his head. Then a touch brought him back to life. Hey, Ryuk! Quinn called out as Ryuk slowly turned his gaze to Quinn, who somehow felt a tingle down his spine. Somehow, it was as if a beast was staring at him and not a human. The eyes before him were completely emotionless, almost lifeless, like the eyes of a dead person. Surprised I passed the test? Hee. Quinn said, trying to lighten the atmosphere and get rid of his fear as Ryuk's eyes slowly gained some color. Yes, Ryuk replied curtly. Hey, you okay? What's with the mood? You must have gone all out in the test. Need some rest? Quinn asked. Ryuk stared for a while before replying. I'm not the one holding the bags under my eyes, he said. Right now, Quinn's eyes were holding large bags, revealing his exhaustion. Go home, Quinn. I'll catch up with you. Just need a few seconds to calm the energy and my thoughts. Ryuk said with a smile as Quinn nodded before also moving out of the large doors, shutting it close and leaving only Ryuk alone in the hall. I'm lost. Ryuk mused as his head slowly dropped down. Now he didn't understand at all. What was he even fighting for now? Revenge. Why does that sound so mundane compared to the reality of what he is facing now? He had thought he had been training himself hard so one day he would kill the Null and avenge his uncle. Yet right now, he was beginning to learn his existence alone might have ensured his uncle's death. He had picked up on Uncle Bob's mentioning of him having lost 90% of his cultivation after passing Ryuk his own veins to support Ryuk's own body. If Uncle Bob possessed those veins, would he have died to the Null? Then who was truly responsible for Uncle Bob's death? The Null or Ryuk himself? I'm lost. He had thought after killing off that Null bird and getting revenge for Uncle Bob, he would go back to Grade E, exchange the core of the Null with Old Jack, and after that, he would settle back to his home, hunting some E-grade beasts and relaxing in Grade E, dying a peaceful death in the place of his birth. What more could one determine as more peaceful than that? Yet right now, he had been told his home wasn't Grade E. Heck, it wasn't even End-Earth at all. Ryuk wasn't even from this planet, the same for his Uncle Bob. This was never his home at all. Out there in the stars was his true world. At first, he had at least been happy that out there was a family waiting for him, waiting for his return. But then, he had lost all of his body parts, and the figures who had been responsible were none other than the family he had been happy to at least return home to. And not only that, but they're also chasing his life, wanting the 3 parts of his body that he had left. Wanting to erase him completely from existence. Just what had he even done wrong that warranted him having no peace until he was fully eliminated? Now End-Earth wasn't his home, but the place he also came from wasn't particularly welcoming. So, where exactly does he even belong? Does he even belong at all? I'm lost. Ryuk whispered out once more as the lights in his eyes began considerably dulling. I caused the pain on Uncle Bob. I caused his death. I have no home to return to. I don't belong. They're coming for me, coming to take what little I have left. Slowly, the guilt began piling and piling and piling, until all Ryuk could see was the guilt. Not a single thing he had done. Not the hard work he had put into training. In the end, what does it all amount to? No. 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 Slowly, the words began ringing out of Ryuk's lips as an intense cold aura began oozing out of his body, and his eyes turned to slits. A crazed, bizarre laughter like the laugh of one who no longer has anything to lose began to ring out of his lips. Let them come, he said as he rose up to his feet, spreading both hands apart. I'll just kill all of them and put an end to it. Shame on me at all for even trying to give up. How nauseating. Uncle Bob had easily given his own life and power just for me to live. I can remember he mentioned that he had saved me from a war, meaning somehow, there must have been people who have risen, people who have died, just to see me escape my enemies. And the thought of sobering myself up even crossed my mind at all? How foolish of me. The last thing I'll be is sober. After people risked their own lives, and literally died just to make me keep living, I'll sit and fall into a pity party for myself? Or I'll rise up, grow stronger to a level beyond those of my enemies, and bring an end to them all. Make all the sacrifices of the people worth it? I was only a baby and they took everything away from me? Now, I'm the one that is supposed to sit and be sad? They extracted the body parts of an infant, and now they want me to be sad and feel guilt? Is that all I can do after all of their deaths? Had Uncle Bob revealed the truth to me, just so I can sit down like a baby and cry and sober up all day? Imagine Uncle Bob watching me right now, seeing me drown in sorrow that wasn't even my fault? Would he smile and be proud? Or would he have nothing but disgust on his face? I swear by your name, Uncle Bob, all those who have fought and risked their life just for me to keep living, I'll make sure none of their deaths are in vain, by chasing down every single one of my enemies and bringing an end to them all. I swear by your name, Uncle Bob, I'll take back every single part of my body that was seized from me. I'll get back my full body, and death to all those who harnessed them in the first place and deprived me of them. I swear by your name, Uncle Bob, I'll find a way back home and report to my mother, whom you have been ever loyal to, even until death, and inform her of every single deed that you have done, and how well you have completed her orders. Could Ryuk feel anger at having his body parts stolen from him? Did he feel pain from having everything ripped away from him? Did he feel pain from knowing, well, if he didn't exist, then Uncle Bob would most likely live? Yes. Yes, he felt monumental pain for every single scenario. But so many people had died. Uncle Bob had died too. Would tearing up bring them back? All those people who died, wouldn't they all have died in vain if he sat down here and turned sober? Perhaps there was hope of being able to help those people back up, or even hope of bringing Uncle Bob back. But would there be such hope if he gave up now? The answer had no doubts. Uncle Bob was able to bring Ryuk back to life when he was only a baby made of hearts, lungs, and his heart. Isn't there a possibility that Ryuk can bring Uncle Bob back with his veins that were supposed to pass blood through his body? Perhaps he could gain back all that was given to him? Perhaps he could get the justice he deserved and make all the people who took everything from him pay for their crimes. All of this was a clear possibility. It was just as possible as everything being taken from Ryuk. But then, would he achieve all of this if he sat down here and remained sober? Then what is the point? What other choice does he have if not to firm himself up and fight and train even harder? Grow stronger so he could ensure that this never happens again. Because verily, the people who had taken away everything from him are currently still looking for him through the galaxies, just like Uncle Bob had said. They coming to take away the last proof of his existence. Sober up and fall into guilt? Would that do anything but make it easier for those people to get him more easily? Then what other choice does he even have, if not to fight till the very end? He had been given one of the best bodies by Uncle Bob, one of an ancient technological race. He had been given cultivation veins to allow him to pass apex energy through his body and give him the ability of cultivation. He had been given the system, an unknown artifact whose potential right now he couldn't even see. In short, Ryuk had everything he needed, everything to make the impossible possibility become reality. And somehow he ought to leave all of those and fall into guilt? After all that Uncle Bob had done, he would make all of the man's efforts be in vain and drown in guilt? Such a pathetic existence. So pathetic, even Ryuk himself felt disgusted. No, he wouldn't fall so low. He would train hard and keep fighting. And keep fighting. He wouldn't wait for his enemies to come to him. He would grow strong enough and go out there, searching for them and eliminating them one by one. This was the only way, the only choice Ryuk had chosen for himself. The game hasn't changed at all. His path hasn't changed at all either. His vengeance is his fuel that drives him on this path, and this time the stakes have only been increased, not changed. And Ryuk himself has also increased, as he had also learned more of himself and undergone significant level-ups, gaining an even more in-depth understanding of what he was capable of. In the end, the game was still on. Nothing has changed other than increased stakes and increased potential. Why would he quit or even stop fighting now of all times? Slowly settling back into his seat, Ryuk's lips opened up, and he puffed out loud, intense white air blowing out of his lungs. How interesting! Activate system interface, Ryuk called out. Instantly, all of his somber aura had been thrown out of the window, and he was back to his normal self once more. Congratulations! Mission. Reach the end of the labyrinth has been completed. Rewards? +3 level-up cards. +1 ability upgrade card. +1000 EXP. System interface. Name: Ryuk Null. Age: 16. Cultivation stage: Perfectionate Origin Plane Cultivation. Level 9. EXP 4400/4000. Does the host wish to level up? Yes. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 10. From here onward, total attribute points will be increased by +5 per level. Total attribute points 15. Level up cards possessed 3. Does the host wish to use a level up card? With the test having already started, Ryuk saw no need for him not to use everything he had to increase his strength. Yes. -1 level up card used. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 11. +15 attribute points obtained. -1 level up card used. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 12. +15 attribute points obtained. -1 level up card used. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 13. +15 attribute points obtained. Total attribute points 60. Open Stats tab. Ryuk ordered immediately. Stats. Strength 70. Agility 70. Endurance 60. Charisma 11. Intelligence 20. Luck null. Mana 50. Attribute points 60. Seems like I didn't gain any attribute points from this source absorption. All of the source energy must have somehow gone to evolving my nanobody, leaving none for me to add to my stats. Ryuk mused silently as he looked at the stats and saw no extra points gained. Something that had happened when he first absorbed source energy. Somehow, he had been expecting massive increases in stats, and that was why he had been able to easily notice the absence of it. Now, how do I add the stat points? Ryuk wondered as his eyes focused on his highly irregular stats before he made his choice. Add 10 points to strength, 10 points to agility, 20 points to endurance, and the rest to intelligence. Immediately after ordering that, he once more felt the familiar invigorating stream of energy flowing through his body before it quickly settled. Congratulations! Points have been successfully added. Strength 80. Agility 80. Endurance 80. Charisma 11. Intelligence 40. Luck null. Mana 50. My quick reaction to the lava crocodiles, my skill control and uses, I can somehow sense that my intelligence affects them in some way. Ignoring my intelligence is a stupid move, as even if not instantly revealing like the other stats, it takes care of me in the last minute and greatly helps avoid sneak attacks and use my abilities well. That can just be what tilts the tide of battle in my favor in an important match. Ryuk mused to himself. Now, let's see the truly important growths. Congratulations. Host on successful evolution of your body. New nanobody skills have been awakened. Does the host wish to see his new skills? Yes. Skills and abilities. Nanobody skills. Nano-Umbral Reaper. Level 1. Description. The host transforms into a monstrous figure made entirely of nanobots and dark energy. Their body becomes larger, covered in black spikes and jagged armor, with glowing red eyes. Additional effects. The host's nanobots become supercharged, drastically enhancing all physical and mental attributes for a short duration of only a minute. This makes the host a blur of distortion, overwhelming enemies with speed and power. Nano Reaper. Level 1. Description. The host wields a massive scythe forged of nanobots, capable of absorbing energy from anything it cuts. This energy infusion enhances the scythe, making it sharper and deadlier. Additional effects. Drains Apex energy from Apex energy constructs. Somehow, the second Ryuk's eyes crossed the decision of both skills. Its activation process instantly entered his head. But somehow, he felt a pang of fear. Just as he suspected, a notification appeared before Ryuk's face. Host will be advised to be exceedingly careful when activating the following nanoskills, as they have been observed to possess dark energy constructs. Temporary inability of movement and mental corruption are possible effects of overuse of dark energy. Related power. Uncle Bob had already made it known to Ryuk that he had simply used the Anunnaki's template design to craft Ryuk's body. Out of that template design is the Anunnaki's skills, one which even Uncle Bob had no idea what it would be at all. But now, looking at the skill names and descriptions, Ryuk could sense a bit of dark power from the Anunnaki race. Most likely, the Anunnaki race are an evil race. Still, that didn't stop him at all from going for a try immediately. "Activate Nano Reaper," he ordered, and in the next instant, Ryuk's hand involuntarily stretched outward as he watched a powerful wave of energy emanate from his right arm, burning away his right sleeve up to his shoulder. In the next instant, bizarre cracks of red opened on Ryuk's right hand's flesh, and some metallic-like liquid began dripping out of Ryuk's body, all gathering in his hands. In the next instant, the liquid began calling over each other on Ryuk's arm and quickly solidifying, and with jaws dropping to the ground, Ryuk watched as a humongous scythe appeared in his hands. The Nano Reaper scythe is 2 meters tall, with a long, sleek metal handle that shines in colors of white and crimson. The metal seems to move slightly, like it's alive, as tiny glowing dots shift across its surface. At the top of the scythe is a large crescent-like curved blade that looks like it's made of dark shimmering energy. The edge of the blade is razor-sharp and has a glowing crimson light around it. The most intimidating feature was the mists on the scythe, which formed dark mist that trailed from the blade as it swung around. This mist emanated from the weapon's core, right in the middle of the handle, giving it an aura of death and despair. As Ryuk consciously swung the scythe outward, the mist formed a cloud of darkness that followed the blade's movements, and suddenly 3 seats before Ryuk all had their tops sliced into halves and fell to the ground. Ryuk's jaw instantly dropped. Somehow, even when he swung, he didn't even feel the blade touch the seats, only the mist, and yet they were sliced into halves. If the mist around the scythe alone was enough to cut the chairs, then just what would happen if the blade itself touched a body? What kind of power is this? Ryuk couldn't help but wonder, but his excitement was short-lived as a notification before his gaze. Mana, -5. Endurance, -10. The system brought Ryuk out of his excitement. So it drains mana too and also my endurance. That means based on my current power level, I will probably only be able to keep this scythe for a minute or two before I'll have no choice but to put it away. Ryuk muttered as he flicked the scythe around his hands once more, before deactivating the skill, and he watched curiously as the scythe turned back into metallic liquid, and all quickly rolled back into the open space in Ryuk's arms, disappearing into his flesh, which soon closed itself up, and once more, Ryuk's normal fleshy hands, that seemed as harmless as possible, appeared. "This is really interesting," Ryuk said with calm excitement. Somehow, he couldn't wait to use that scythe in a real fight and feel its true power. Looking at the remaining skill, Ryuk stared long at it, before ultimately deciding not to use the skill. The Nano-Umbral Reaper ability gave Ryuk quite the chills. If something had made his alarm bells ring so hard, it would probably be foolish for him to use it anyway. So indeed, Ryuk decided not to. "I won't be using this skill unless absolutely necessary. Somehow, I feel the transformation would be too drastic, and there will be consequences," he thought. Having checked and become familiar with his new power, Ryuk settled back down on his seat, before closing his eyes. Immediately, his consciousness faded into himself as he arrived in the green grassy world. It was none other than Ryuk's pet world, and currently at the center of it was a creature wrapped up, to the size of a small rock. "Isha," Ryuk whispered as he arrived before Isha, his hands reaching for her white scales. He couldn't help but notice, right now, there were some weird runic symbols starting to form all over Isha's scaled body, brimming with an elegant blue light. There's so much energy in her. Ryuk could easily feel the energy in Isha's every single cell from his touch, and he knew well all of her cells were currently stretched to their limit from the intense energy within her. And somehow, the intense stretching ended up creating the runes, which also began to absorb this abundant energy into them. Ryuk had no idea what these runes did, but since they were formed from Isha's body, then they couldn't be counterproductive. Somehow, he could see the runes absorbing the abundant power into Isha, And he knew well, it would only be a matter of time before Isha's bloatedness disappeared. Host need not worry. Isha is currently in a slumber now, to regulate its intense energy. Another slumber. Rest well, Isha. Ryuk murmured silently as he rubbed Isha's scales, before rising up and fading away from the pet world, leaving the slumbering ice serpent alone in the pet world. With Isha having been checked on, Ryuk felt no reason to remain in the hall, and he rose from his seat before moving out. Alighting down the long stairs, he soon arrived at the main street and began walking down the streets when suddenly his eyes wandered to the side, finding nothing but a dark alleyway. Ryuk looked at the alleyway with his dull eyes for a little over 5 seconds, before he took his gaze away and resumed walking with the same dull expression, soon finding his way out of the area. He ignored us, boss. A voice suddenly rang out from the same dark alleyway that Ryuk had looked into, and within the shadowy depths were none other than a total of 3 fallen geniuses. They were all fallen geniuses who had their eyes looking at the place where Ryuk had left from. In the end, he was just a coward who didn't dare to take the challenge. Another of the fallen geniuses said, short dark hair and eyes, as he scoffed in mockery, his arms folded across his chest. Silence covered the area as the 2 fallen geniuses looked behind them, finding another fallen genius who currently had his back to the wall, his eyes looking down at his feet. He also had long dark hair that reached down his shoulder, and slowly, he raised his face, revealing a fairly handsome face with glowing silver eyes. I sensed not an ounce of fear from him, just indifference and nonchalance, the genius said, as the 2 remaining fallen geniuses had their eyes locked on him. Could he be thinking? The shorter fallen genius asked as the reclining fallen genius, referred to as the boss, nodded. He thinks we're not worth his time. Such trashy humans with their ignorant pride. The short dark-haired fallen genius said, spitting to the side in disgust. Don't worry. He won't be feeling that way soon enough. You have his entire movement schedule, right, Gory? The boss asked the short fallen genius who nodded his head. Yes, boss. Of course. Good. Then we strike him tomorrow night after his training, the boss said, and in the next instant, the trio flashed from where they stood, before becoming one with the darkness, fading away as if they never existed there in the first place. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking echoed loudly through the long corridor that was as silent as a ghost. The figure resembled none other than Ryuk. Step, step. Heavy stomping echoed in Ryuk's hearing from outside the door before the feet came closer, stopping and asking, Who's there? Ryuk. Ryuk replied, and the door locks were struck before a head poked out through the door with sleepy eyes. Ryuk, welcome back, Quinn said, moving aside for him to enter before shutting the door completely. What happened to your clothes sleeve? Quinn suddenly asked, noticing Ryuk's torn clothing, and Ryuk shrugged helplessly before going into the bathroom. The sound of water washing down soon filled the room. With a loud yawn and sleepy eyes, Quinn climbed back into bed and buried himself in the mattress. Ryuk finished up with his quick shower in a little more than 5 minutes and exited, donning the fluffy pajamas he had taken from the store some time ago before also moving to his bed. Silence covered the room for a while, before eventually, it was broken. Hey, Quinn! Ryuk suddenly called out, and Quinn's eyes immediately flashed open. He poked his head out from above, turning to look at Ryuk. Aha! If I may ask, how did you form your Apex realm? Ryuk suddenly asked as Quinn raised an eyebrow before sighing and collapsing back into the bed. And here I thought you wanted to ask me how I managed to pass. 'Tis that you squandered my chance to show off, Quinn added in his thoughts. Didn't you just sit your ass down on a spot and wait for others to get eliminated first? Ryuk said with a click of his tongue, as hot air puffed out of Quinn's ears and nose. Of course not, you maniac. What do you call me for? I passed the test fair and square. Quinn roared aloud, as Ryuk chuckled. Why so loud if you won it fair and square? Then, nerdy paranoia, he called out smugly. You! TCH, I don't want to talk to you anymore. What did you ask for again? Quinn said, wanting to change the topic of the discussion. Your Apex Realm? How did you form it? What is an Apex Realm at all? Ryuk asked once more. He had been having problems with being able to move to the Realm of Ascendancy. He knew he needed information about the Apex Realm before he could do so. That's when the thought had entered Ryuk's head. Why not just ask somebody who has already broken through the stage instead? Wouldn't they be the best person to explain to him about it? And luckily, he had a nerdy paranoid friend who is capable of explaining very well as a roommate. Why not just ask him instead and try to pick up as much information as possible? How to forge the Apex Realm, huh? Quinn asked, with a bit of surprising perplexity in his voice. You're trying to move to the plane of ascension, no? He asked as Ryuk gave a yes reply. Well, ascending simply means forging a realm that embodies your essence. Only then will you ascend, Quinn said, before going silent, and Ryuk simply looked dumbly at the bed above him. Forge a realm that embodies your essence, and only then will you ascend? How the F***ck am I supposed to learn anything from that? Don't worry, you'll know when it's time. The fact that you have no idea probably means you still aren't worthy of reaching the stage. You know, only mighty geniuses like me who... Forget it. Forget it. I've heard, Ryuk said, not wanting to hear the endless bragging, as Quinn chuckled before diving deeper into his bed and soon snoring off. Let's just hope my current abilities are enough to guarantee myself a spot. I don't see myself reaching the plane of ascendancy anytime soon. Definitely not in 2 days at least. Bong. The sound of the metallic wall caving in, from a body smashing right into it, rang out loudly through the entire room, followed by a pained, spine-chilling gasp. RCCCCC. In the next instant, an incredibly powerful beam of energy erupted outward with immense power, the air along its path shuddering from the monumental force. Immediately, the entire wall caved in as Ryuk barely shifted his face to the side at the last second, blood spraying out from the side of his cheek. But he paid that no mind as he hurried away quickly from the chasm on the wall, with the beam chasing after him. The figure responsible was a humanoid robot, 2 meters in height, hovering in the air, surrounded by a pulsating glow of apex energy. Currently, it had its palm opened up, following after Ryuk with the beam of energy that emanated from the hole within its palm. Strong. It's devastatingly strong. Ryuk screamed in his head as he ran across the training room, slipping to the ground to dodge the beam and quickly ascending forward toward the robot, which stopped its beam and shot forward with speed toward Ryuk. It was so fast that it moved with twice the speed of Ryuk. When it reached 10 meters away from him, its eyes flashed red, and 2 laser beams suddenly erupted from its face. What the? Quickly, Ryuk shifted his trajectory by jumping into the air, the laser beams tearing through his back clothing and creating scorching marks on his skin. But Ryuk's eyes flashed as he found the robot now lying horizontally in the air, its energy core situated at its chest, erupting with power that seemed ready to pierce through Ryuk's chest and blast a hole straight through him. With clenched teeth, Ryuk ordered, "Activate Nano Reaper." In the next instant, what seemed more of a pillar of energy than a laser beam erupted outward toward Ryuk. His right sleeve was blown apart as a humongous scythe materialized in his arms, and he cleaved it forward with all his power. The devastating energy ripple shook the entire training room with power, cracks appearing on the ground as Ryuk found himself shifting backward and backward from the beam of energy. His arm shuddered from the unbelievable amount of power. Damn! He roared out in anger at his own helplessness as he ground his teeth together. Activate Frost Veil, he ordered, as mist began emanating from his feet, quickly spreading forth and reducing the entire area to a land of ice and snow, that somehow managed to slow down the speed of the beam for a few seconds, and even the robot paused in the air for a bit. Finally, Ryuk saw his chance. Taking a step to the side and quickly turning, he unstuck himself from the confrontation with the beam, taking a minor injury to his left arm that instantly sent blood flying around the area. In the next instant, his body flashed forward with speed, instantly appearing 3 meters in the air above the robot. Dai! Ryuk roared out in anger as his scythe ripped downward with power. The robot was somehow even still able to react as it countered forward with a punch toward Ryuk's scythe. But its resistance was futile. The second the scythe landed on the robot's fist, it resisted for a while before instantly cleaving through its arm. Ryuk severed it down, twisting when he reached the shoulder, and slashing diagonally down the robot's chest before collapsing onto the ground on both knees. The scythe fell off his arms, reducing itself to tiny nanobots that folded back into his right arm. Bang! An even louder bang was heard a moment later as the robot collapsed right in front of Ryuk, with its upper body severed from its lower body and placed 2 meters away from it. Oh! Ah! Ah! Turbid breathing could be heard through the room coming from none other than Ryuk, who seemed just one step close to death. His eyes were looking blankly at the space in front of him, where the holograph was flashing. Congratulations! Host has completed the main quest. Quest: defeat a core stage plane of Ascendancy robot. Rewards: +1 level up card, +1100 EXP, +1 ability upgrade card. Finally, Ryuk said as he struggled to keep his own beating heart calm. Slowly, the deep cut on the left side of his face began closing up, and the same could be said for the hole in his left arm. There were a few scratches all around his body, but they would also all get fixed soon. The only thing that wouldn't be recovering anytime soon was his endurance, which was at 5. It had taken all that Ryuk had to be able to defeat a robot at the core stage of the Plane of Ascension. Somehow, Ryuk expected in his heart that all of the top 20 fallen geniuses would be at least in the core stage of the Plane of Ascension, meaning they would be just as strong as the robot. He barely even survived it. Unlike the robots, the fallen family would possess sophisticated abilities, be capable of deep thinking, and adapt to Ryuk's fighting style. That means they would no doubt be stronger still than the robot he had defeated. Right now, there was nothing to congratulate at all. He was still too weak to be able to face the top 20 in a fight, let alone fight the Ultimate 10. And to top it all off, there was just 2 days left. Activate System Interface, Ryuk ordered, and an instant later, System Interface. Name: Ryuk Null. Age: 16. Cultivation Stage: Perfectionate Origin Plane Cultivation. Level: 13. EXP: 400/5000. Level Up Card 1. Does host wish to use Level Up Card? Yes. Ryuk ordered, and immediately, congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 14, plus 15 attribute points obtained. Stats: Strength: 80. Agility: 80. Endurance: 80, -75. Charisma: 11. Intelligence: 40. Luck: Null.
Mana: 50, 40.
Attribute points: 0. The dash in the stats should be because of my exhausted state right now. Add 5 attribute points to strength, 5 attribute points to agility, and 5 attribute points to endurance. Congratulations. Points have been successfully added. Host grows stronger. The geniuses are all strong. But for these 2 days, I'm pretty sure everyone will be on their turf. The ultimate geniuses do not feel any threat from the fallen geniuses below, and the remaining fallen geniuses are already aware they'll be losing out soon. Now everyone is living on easy mode, and this is my best chance. Ryuk mused to himself as he slowly rose back to his feet. His injuries had already closed up, and his mana and endurance had reached a good level, at least enough for him to stand and throw a few punches without any problem. I have to grow stronger, faster than they think is possible. I have to win a spot, Ryuk said with determination as holographic tablets began appearing around him. Quickly, he tapped on their surface. In the next instant, the dilapidated training room around him began mending itself. The severed robot in its middle disappeared into the walls, and in its place appeared another robot, which slowly shimmered into the air before directing its attention toward Ryuk. raising its plasma weapon that began flaring with a destructive beam of energy. "I have to win!" Ryuk roared, followed by the air tearing apart as the destructive beam ripped through the wall, shredding Ryuk's image. But it was only an afterimage, as his figure appeared in front of the robot, sending forth a powerful punch. Dai! Boom! Step, step, step. The sound of footsteps rang out through the training hall as a fallen genius calmly walked through the area. It was a young man, towering at a height of 1.9 meters, making him look like an adult. But on his face, one could easily sense he was still only a teen, albeit looking mature. Dressed in flowing silver clothes and trousers that matched his silver hair and eyes, he radiated a refined aura like that of a scholar. Yet somehow, if one focused their attention on him, they would barely notice the air around him shimmering, unable to settle, as though the air itself was on fire. Ba-ong! Boom! Boom! Ha! A faint gasp escaped the young man's lips as he paused in his steps before looking to the side, where a door could be seen. From there, he could hear incredibly powerful explosions. But after an especially loud one, the sound faded away, with the room returning to silence once more. The young man slowly turned to the door before his hand reached for the doorknob. He tried to open it, but the door wouldn't budge. Still, the door didn't resist for long. The doorknob suddenly became engulfed in silver flames, and soon, the entire door was burning in silver fire until it turned into nothing but silvery ash that drifted into the room. Step, step. The sound of footsteps rang out in the dilapidated room as silvery eyes scanned the destruction all over the place. There wasn't a single place on the wall that didn't have a gaping hole, all in human-shaped formats. The ground was riddled with deep potholes, where pools of blood had gathered. At the center of the training room was a robot cut into 4 different pieces. The silvery-haired young man slowly walked toward it, his hands trailing along the fine cuts on the robot's body. Only a truly fine blade could have done such beautiful work of art, the young man said, a bit of interest flashing in his eyes as he finally turned to the edge of the training room. There, a boy was currently kneeling on both knees, blood trailing down his jaw and dripping onto his white clothes. There were holes everywhere in his body, but surprisingly, they were closing up quite fast. For now, he seemed absolutely unable to move, barely breathing hazily from his kneeling position. "Tell me, human, what blade did the work of art on this robot?" the fallen genius asked as he walked toward Ryuk. Right now, Ryuk was in a world of his own, a world of pain. He had fought with exactly 3 robots at the core stage of Ascension in a row. Now, he could barely feel his own chest pumping from the adrenaline. There were so many destructions to his nanobody that it somehow amazed him he was still standing right now. Surprisingly, the last robot had proved to be quite the powerful nemesis, properly beating up the already battered-up Ryuk. But in the end, Ryuk had still managed to cleave it into 4 parts. But then there were these footsteps, succeeding in awakening him as he slowly raised his head, using his remaining working left eye to gaze at the fallen genius. Looking at the fallen genius, Ryuk hadn't seen him around before. But looking at the air around him and seeing the shimmering distortion, a single thought appeared in Ryuk's head. A top 20 at least. Without the young man even needing to do anything or showcase his power, Ryuk could easily sense his level based on his aura. Somehow, this is the perfect time to test out my ability against a fallen genius in the top 20. But with my current injuries, even Quinn wouldn't find it too difficult to give me a good beating. Ryuk thought, and in the end, he decided to cooperate with the youth. An ability. Don't ask to see it. I barely have enough mana to raise myself up. Talk less of activating it. He replied as he took himself away from his kneeling position, his back slamming on the wall, sitting properly. The only cut I've seen with such beauty is that of that weird Darius kid, the guy said with a thoughtful expression as Ryuk's eyes flashed and he unconsciously called out. "You mean Darius Crescent?" he asked as the guy narrowed his eyes. "He isn't strong enough to make me remember his full name, so I can't say for sure." The reply seemed like the most arrogant thing Ryuk had ever heard in his life. According to Quinn, Darius Crescent was a genius who was said to possess a blade that could cut through the heaviest of armor. He was 6th on the Ultima ranking, yet the boy was saying he was too weak for him to remember his name? How arrogant is that? And who are you? Ryuk couldn't help asking. Perhaps the boy was one of the 3 that Quinn didn't mention. Who knows? Who am I? You're also too weak to know. For real. Chuckle. A chuckle couldn't help but escape Ryuk's lips as he stared up at the guy who also stared back at him with a smile. Ryuk hadn't met many arrogant people in his life, nor was he very good with the word arrogant, being the first to come to his mind when he saw a person. But surprisingly, that was the first thing that came to his mind when he looked at this scholarly-looking guy. What? You don't believe you're weak? The guy asked as he suddenly raised his finger. In the next instant, a holographic screen appeared as the boy rapidly typed on its surface. Immediately, the chasm around the room faded away, and then a single robot appeared in the sky. Immediately, Ryuk's face changed. The robot was a new model at the core plane of Ascension, just like the one Ryuk had fought with, but right now, Ryuk was barely able to stand. Yet the guy had unleashed a robot in the room. How would he fight the robot? Chuckle. To unleash a robot on a human who can barely stand? I'm not that pathetic, the guy said with a grin as both Ryuk and he heard the sound of heavy soaring. The robot had already been activated, and right now it was rushing toward the guy who was standing. In an instant, it appeared before him, immediately throwing out a heavy punch. Ryuk watched as the boy suddenly glitched in his position, and the robot passed through him like he didn't exist. Just a second later, boom! The robot smashed into the wall, seemingly unable to quickly stop its motion, and Ryuk watched as the boy remained in the place he had been, never having moved at all. But right now, there was a difference. His left hand was currently burning with a silver flame, and instantly, Ryuk's eyes widened completely in shock as his gaze snapped to the robot. It slowly turned its gaze to them and then tore itself out of the wall. Took a single step outward, preparing to launch itself for the next attack. But then, the instant its legs touched the ground, it started turning into silvery ashes. Ryuk watched in shock as the robot's entire body suddenly began burning with a silvery flame and turning into ashes. Less than 10 seconds later, there was nothing in the room except Ryuk and the boy, whose left hand slowly stopped emitting the silvery blue flame. The robot had been defeated in a little less than 20 seconds after the fight began, and the flame-wielding boy had yet to move from his position throughout the duration, still looking at Ryuk with the same grin on his face. Somehow, that thing is what had reduced you to such a pathetic state, and you think yourself not weak? The boy asked once again as Ryuk looked into his fiery eyes for a while before he smiled and nodded. Yes, I am weak, Ryuk said. The boy looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Somehow, it surprised him. There was actually a weak person in this world willing to admit to their own weakness. The majority of people he knew would rather die than admit they were weak, most especially the fallen genius. Yet here was a boy agreeing to be weak without any doubt or resistance at all. It somehow piqued the young man's interest. Could it be that this human before him had no pride in himself at all, to willingly admit to his own weakness? One who had fought so hard and then, faced with the sight of someone easily destroying what he had fought so hard for, would usually want to fight back, to argue that what he had fought was everything. But the human had just gone ahead and admitted to his weakness. It was somehow refreshing. But not for long, Ryuk added in the end. The boy looked at him, and then, ha 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 ha. A loud laughter rang out through the room as the boy laughed uncontrollably for a long while before eventually steadying himself. Then, with a smirk that reached his ears, he stretched out his hand toward Ryuk, who looked at it dubiously for a while before taking it. In one swift motion, the boy pulled him up to his feet. I'll see you in the test, human. Hopefully, you're not weak by then. Those were his last words before he moved out of the training room, his back soon disappearing into the far distance. That can only be Ignatius Blade, one of the top 3 Ultima geniuses, Ryuk said with a knowing smirk. If he had thought the boy was the most arrogant bastard that existed, Ryuk's thoughts hadn't changed at all. The boy was arrogant as hell. But there was a difference. He had the strength to back it up. When he had called the sixth most powerful Ultima Genius a weird kid, who wasn't even worthy of remembering his name, it was safe to say he was arrogant. But then he had proven his ability and defeated a core stage plane of Ascension robot with nothing more than a touch. He had proven that, even though he was arrogant, it wasn't an arrogance born of ignorance but one forged by his own strength and ability. The only one who could easily defeat a core stage robot at the plane of Ascension cultivation and call a sixth-ranked Ultima Genius weak could only be one of the top 3 most powerful Ultima Geniuses. And if Ryuk's memories served him well, there were 3 most powerful Ultima Geniuses, about whom nothing was known. They were Kalidor Whale, Morgaine Dominaire, and Ignatius Blade. The only male name amongst them was Ignatius Blade, and Ryuk could easily sense that this person was undoubtedly him. But it wasn't just his name that Ryuk knew. He now also knew his skills. He controls an incredibly destructive silver flame that reduces everything it touches to ash. Somehow, all he needs is a touch, and he will burn down anything in his path, Ryuk analyzed. But he's not undefeatable. There are 2 ways to defeat him. Either sever off his hands, which act as a conduit for him to channel the flames, or simply avoid him touching you. One of the 2 ways, and I will defeat Ignatius Blade. He assessed with cold eyes and the confident smirk of a hunter analyzing its prey. I've learned of almost all of the abilities of the Ultima 10. The only person whose ability I am not aware of is Kalidor Whale. Ryuk mused to himself as he finally raised himself up, his injuries having all closed up. Still, even though I know their abilities, that only prevents me from being surprised in an open confrontation. Right now, as I am, I can't beat any of them yet. I need to keep growing stronger. Ryuk mused to himself as he cracked his backbone. In the next instant, he summoned the holographic panel and began typing, sending new commands. Not long after, another robot appeared in the middle of the room as Ryuk prepared himself for the 5th round of battle. 12 hours later, it was currently 7 in the evening, and in the training room, a figure could be seen on one knee, a gigantic scythe in his hands, supporting him from falling. Around him lay the severed bodies of robotic parts splattered across the entire area, with cracked walls and potholes all over. Congratulations! Host has defeated a total of 15 core stage plane of Ascension cultivators. Host has gained a total of 5,000 EXP. The system announced as the scythe disappeared from Ryuk's hands, and he forced himself to his legs. Right now, his entire upper body was revealed, his clothes having been burned away from destructive energy beams, leaving his torn trousers on him. Thank God I brought new pants just in case. Ryuk thought as a pair of pants appeared, and he quickly donned them. Mist appeared around his body, clearing away the dust and soot on his skin, and his blood retracted back into his body from the power of his regeneration. Once more, Ryuk resembled his usual self, almost as if he had not just been on his last legs a few seconds ago. He had watched his own life flash before his eyes through the torturous moments he called training, and somehow he could feel every time he pushed through his limits, he grew stronger. A type of strength he couldn't explain, but he could easily sense it after coming closer to death every time. Total EXP 5400/5000. Does host wish to level up? The system couldn't help but ask, and Ryuk nodded. Congratulations. Host has leveled up to level 15. Plus 15 attribute points have been obtained. Stats: Strength 85, Agility 85, Endurance 85, -70, Charisma 11, Intelligence 40, Luck null, Mana 50, -45, Attributes 15. Add 5 attribute points to Strength, add 5 points to Agility, and add the rest to Endurance, Ryuk ordered. Once more, he felt the warm streams of energy that caused his wounds to instantly close up and for him to feel all of his energy appear once more. There was no doubt to it. He was growing stronger with every passing hour. Congratulations. Host has grown stronger. The system announced as Ryuk heaved a sigh of relief, a holographic panel appearing around him, which he quickly tapped on, causing the robots to disappear into the room, and all of the holes instantly closing up. But this time, no more robots appeared. Ryuk knew well, he had been here for close to 12 hours now. It was time he went to the special cultivation room to recover his mana, while also hoping he gained an epiphany in his meditation. Immediately, he headed out. 6 hours later, I managed to recover all of my mana, but my mana capacity didn't increase even after 5 hours of relentless cultivation, and I gained no epiphany still. Ryuk muttered as he walked down the cold, lonely street. Mana 50. Looking at his mana panel, somehow his mana never increased no matter how much Ryuk tried to absorb mana. His mana remained the same 50 points nonetheless. It somehow told him that he had currently reached a bottleneck and that he would need to reach the next level before he could increase his mana count. It should be around 1 a.m. right now. I should go to sleep and call it a day. Ryuk mused to himself as he continued on the lonely path. But suddenly, his eyes narrowed, and he unconsciously took 2 steps backward. In the next instant, boom! Something smashed down roughly in front of Ryuk, carving a deep chasm. Slowly, the dust settled, finally revealing what cracked. It was none other than a hammer, one which Ryuk found quite familiar. In the next instant, the hammer suddenly rose up into the air before flying in a particular direction and landing into a palm that rose up to grab it. The figure was a muscular, burly fallen genius standing at the top of a building, a sleek smile on his face as an evil light flashed in his eyes, staring at Ryuk, who looked back calmly at his evil expression before he turned his head to the side. On another skyscraper to his left, there were 2 other fallen family geniuses, and behind him, he could sense another 3 standing behind him. A total of 6 fallen geniuses. Thank God I'm in my full strength right now, or things might have been a little headache-inducing, Ryuk thought in his mind. And somehow they chose a place far away from the dorm rooms and the instructor's area. The perfect place for an ambush. If you all want to fight, why stand so far away? Your scaredy balls can't stand before a puny human. Ryuk's disdaining voice rang through the silent twilight night, echoing with uncanny clearness as all of the fallen geniuses had their smirks wiped off. In the next instant, bang, 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 bang. A total of 6 bangs rang out from all directions as they all dropped to the ground, walking towards Ryuk and pausing 5 meters away from him. We had thought your tiny balls would decide to run. Who would have expected a little bit of courage in them? A fallen genius said with a chuckle behind Ryuk, as the others laughed out loud. Ryuk nodded and chuckled too. That's a good one. Anyway, you all are here to break a few of my bones, right? Well then, is there anyone here among you that is a top 20 or top 25? Ha! 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 Immediately, all of the geniuses broke into a ha mode, as Ryuk raised an eyebrow, looking at the geniuses with the same raised eyebrow that they were also directing at him. Quickly, the scene turned into a dumb one of people staring at each other as if they were all fools. What the? Why would you need a top 20 genius to be here? One of the geniuses couldn't help resisting the urge to ask, as Ryuk sighed. Nothing much, actually. I've just been wondering how my strength would fare against a top 20 genius for some time now. It would really do me good to fight one before the test began. It's somehow disappointing none of you 6 are part of them, Ryuk said with a sad tone that left all the geniuses speechless. While they were doubling in shock, Ryuk slowly walked forward with a relaxed, lazy expression as he passed by a fallen genius, tapping him on the shoulder twice before continuing on his way. It's late already. You guys should go to sleep, lest your little balls get cold in the chilling night. Step, step, step. Slowly, the footsteps continued into the distance calmly, as all 6 geniuses looked at each other in the eyes, their prey moving out of their circle. What the hell are you all doing? Staring at each other's balls? Get him! The boss of the group, a short, chubby fallen, said as the sound of roars filled Ryuk's ears. He turned his head, flashing a cocky grin at the idiots. Finally got out of your heads. Took you idiots long enough. Boom! The entire place where Ryuk stood instantly crumbled to pieces as a hammer smashed into the ground, held by none other than a gigantic muscular figure. Yet in the next instant, boom! A softer-sounding boom resounded as a kick landed on the cheek of the boy, who slammed down the hammer, sending him flying to the side. He slammed into the ground, bouncing off it a couple of times, before slamming into a glassy structure that caused erupting dust and blocked everyone's gaze. Schreierang! The sound of a katana leaving its sheath resounded as a sword slashed out from behind, but failed to connect to Ryuk's head as he calmly bent to the ground and picked up the large hammer, narrowly dodging the sword. In the next instant, bang! The one who slashed the sword found the end of a large hammer swinging toward his face, slamming straight onto his head. With an indifferent gaze, Ryuk watched as his large cheeks wiggled under the effect of the hammer, all of his face squeezing over the hammer's surface before he was instantly sent flying into the distance, amidst blood and teeth flying all over the area. The katana slowly fell down and landed gently in Ryuk's hand as he began walking toward the remaining 4 geniuses who stood in their tracks. Did he just get rid of Paul and Roland? What the hell are you all waiting for? Get him! The short, chubby, fallen angel commanded as the others immediately regained themselves and ran forward. One of them immediately turned into 5 of himself that surrounded Ryuk's figure, all performing different attacks. Clones? Ryuk called aloud in shock, but soon he smiled as he stood in the center, ignoring all the attacks and silently stabbing his katana into the stomach of a clone at the side. Puchuchi! Immediately, the sound of a sword piercing through flesh rang out as blood burst out, and all of the clones instantly faded away into nothing, leaving just the one who slowly stepped backward in shock, collapsing onto his knees with blood raining down his lips. How did he know? The fallen angel asked in shock, but Ryuk was already onto the second opponent. Fallen storm tsunami! A genius roared out, gliding his hands in a weird position as Ryuk turned his gaze to the ground with a raised eyebrow. In the next instant, a storm formed from beneath the ground, throwing Ryuk upward into the air. Fallen arrows! Another genius roared out as arrows of light appeared all around him. In the next instant, they soared forward toward Ryuk, who instantly slapped his hands out with speed, slapping away all the arrows and catching 2 in his hands. In the next instant, he faded away into thin air. Where did he go? Behind you! A fallen genius roared out to another as Michelson tried to instantly run, but failed when he felt 2 arrows pierce into his shoulders. The power of the stab was enough to drive him straight into the ground, leaving only his head and his shoulders puffing out, pinned to the ground by the arrows stuck in his shoulders. Ergeg! A spine-chilling scream of pain rang out from the boy's mouth. Dai! One of the fallen geniuses roared aloud, appearing in front of Ryuk with hands coated in golden energy. Boom! 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 Immediately, punches flew over Ryuk's head as he shifted back, dodging a row of punches and slapping away the others. Without much change, Ryuk turned his back while moving, dodging a kick to his back by bending his knees. An interesting smirk formed on his face as he watched the genius giving it all he could, yet failing to touch him. More power! Immediately, the genius swerved a punch toward Ryuk's face but once again missed, as he dodged backward. Ryuk suddenly jerked forward with speed, his eyes mere inches from the young man's shocked face. More power! He whispered. Huh? The boy asked, but his face changed in the next instant when a powerful backhand slap connected straight to his face, blood splashing out of his lips as he soared to the side. Through the blood flying in the air, he barely saw the crazed red light in Ryuk's gaze along with his lips moving, forming the words, "Put more power into your punch when you strike. Hey hey hey. Got you now." A sinister voice rang out as Ryuk's eyes narrowed when he felt himself carried up the storm once more, and then a chain tore through the storm, instantly wrapping up and bonding all over Ryuk, before proceeding to squeezing him tight. You made me fall for it twice. Nice! Ryuk suddenly roared out with a crazy smile as he flexed his muscles tightly through the chain and then, boom! The chain instantly exploded as the short guy's eyes flashed in shock. He tore through my chain with his body strength? Impossible. The boy holding the cut-up chain said, but instantly woke up when he heard the question. Now, where is he? Ha! In the next instant, Nolan's face changed as he felt a hand grab onto the back of his clothes, and his motion instantly stopped. Currently, Ryuk stood, his back to the guy summoning the storm that had caught him twice now, with a large grin on his face. Let's talk in the air, Ryuk whispered as he took a single step forward, veins bulging all over his arm. Nolan felt himself getting lifted off his feet, and in the next instant, he was flung straight into the sky with unimaginable force. What the hell? Nolan wondered, and in the next instant, a figure appeared right in front of him, flashing forth with insane speed, and then, boom! Ryuk's legs slammed forward with speed, smashing into Nolan's stomach and sending him flying into a distant glass skyscraper. Shatter. Boom. 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 The building's glass structure cracked to pieces as Nolan violently tore through it, slamming into various chairs and walls before being thrown outside once more. Activate storm balls, he ordered with a powerful shout, and balls of storm instantly soared forward. But he found Ryuk nowhere, and in the next instant he heard the roar. Behind you! Immediately, he turned behind him mid-air, only to find Ryuk right above him. Both of his hands clenched together to form a massive fist, and then, an even louder boom rang through the air as circular shockwaves erupted from the point of contact. Nolan soared down into the ground, smashing into the tiled road and carving a giant crater into the earth. Slowly, Ryuk landed on the ground, and right now there were only two figures remaining standing. The short fallen and the muscular guy who owned the hammer that Ryuk had kicked away before. He had somehow recovered from the kick, and right now his hammer was rolling in his arms. If I remember correctly, you're the trash that slammed a hammer straight into my face on the day I first arrived here, no? Ryuk suddenly asked as he finally remembered why he found the muscular guy to be familiar. He was none other than the one whose hammer had slammed into Ryuk's face and whose hammer he had tried to pick up but failed. Now, if I remember well, I still haven't paid you that debt, have I? Ryuk said as he cracked his back, bending his arms. What the hell are you waiting for? The short guy asked before ordering, attack! He commanded the muscular guy, who instantly flashed forward towards Ryuk, the hammer slamming straight for Ryuk's head from the top. This time, Ryuk never bothered to dodge, instead clenching his fist tightly and bending slightly to the ground before throwing an uppercut toward the hammer. Dai thing. Immediately, the sound of iron slamming into iron rang out through the air, creating a spine-chilling sound, and then, boom! The hammer exploded into bits of rock as Roland's eyes widened in shock. Impossible! He murmured, stepping backward, but a hand soon grabbed onto his, pulling him forth, and then, bang! Ryuk's elbow slashed forward like a sword, slamming into Nolan's face and tearing apart a line through the left side of his face. Immediately followed, Ryuk's hand extended outward, grabbing the back of Roland's head and pulling downward. Bamk. A knee slammed into Nolan's stomach, followed by another punch to his face that sent him retreat-ong backward. Quickly, Ryuk flashed forward with speed as his hand grabbed onto Nolan's face, raising him into the air and slamming him into the hard. Cracks spread all over the ground, instantly knocking the muscular giant unconscious. What are you all still waiting for? Attack! The short fallen guy roared out, his voice echoing loudly. He somehow seemed to be enjoying it, based on how he closed his eyes and clenched his fists while roaring at the top of his lungs. But then, there were no rushed movements. All of the fallen genius had been beaten up, and he was all that was left. Slowly, he opened his eyes, only to find Ryuk staring down at him. Ryuk's hand stretched out as he picked up the short guy by his neck, leaving him dangling in the air. You? How? You bastard! You dare lay hands on me? Ho ho ho, then you're dead meat. The young master will kill you in the test, you bastard. Get your filthy hands off. In an instant, A powerful shockwave and loud boom rang throughout the world as Ryuk's fist crashed into the young man's stomach. His entire body weight hung on Ryuk's fist. In the next instant, Tonk, who was trying to threaten Ryuk, felt his body forming a smooth in the air. His eyes bulged to their absolute limit, blood spewing uncontrollably from his mouth as he was sent flying off. His trajectory formed a curved projectile path, and he landed on the ground, hacking up blood uncontrollably. "Just tell your young master to leave me out of his hatred, will you?" Ryuk said coldly. "And if he doesn't want to, he should at least send someone in the top 20 to me." Ryuk spoke to the boy still hacking up blood as he slowly turned, placed both hands into his pockets, and walked away. Behind him lay the beaten bodies of the fallen geniuses. In less than 5 minutes, Ryuk had made quick work of 6 fallen family geniuses, as easily as breathing, and without suffering a single injury at all. "Monster! He's a monster!" The short guy screamed out as he barely stopped himself from hacking up blood. Without waiting, he quickly ran away from the scene. "I have to warn the young master. The human has grown. And he has grown so fast too. Everyone needs to know. The human is a monster." When Ryuk woke up the next day, the first thing he felt was the sound of his stomach reverberating with hunger. A faint, shocked noise escaped him as he looked down at his stomach. Surprisingly, he was incredibly hungry. Ryuk hadn't bothered about the cafeteria since the first time he had arrived there. He had never gone back because, after every special cultivation session at night, his hunger usually disappeared, leaving him with no need to eat. He thought it wiser to focus that time and energy on training instead. But now, for the first time in close to 15 days, his stomach was actually grumbling with hunger. "Wait, if I don't even have a stomach, then how come I can feel hunger? Where does the food even go? Just what did you do, Uncle Bob?" Ryuk thought, feeling a little headache creeping in with the confusion. However, his thoughts were interrupted when he heard a voice. "Let me guess. You haven't eaten at all in close to a week now?" Quinn's mocking tone echoed through the room as the boy jumped down from his upper bunk, stretching his tiny body with a few satisfying cracks of his joints. "Just don't break your boneless back," Ryuk mocked as Quinn snorted. "TCH. Go eat, you maniac. Imagine being defeated by hunger before the test. That said, it would be a real treat to watch, Quinn said, and Ryuk rolled his eyes. Since there were no classes, the atmosphere around the camp was pretty lax compared to normal. Around this time, both of them would usually be fighting over who got to use the bathroom first, then sprinting off to class. But Ryuk's schedule remained unchanged. He needed to train as much as he could today. However, at the very least, he needed to visit the cafeteria to settle his grumbling stomach. He rose up and moved to the bathroom, emerging a few minutes later, well-dressed in a simple white shirt and trousers, accented with a few blue designs. "First time you're wearing clothes with some other colors mixed in," Quinn observed. Ryuk shrugged nonchalantly but narrowed his eyes when he noticed Quinn carefully folding clothes and tucking them into a travel bag. "And what are you doing?" Ryuk asked as Quinn rolled his eyes. "Preparing." "Preparing for what?" "Preparing to leave, of course. The next test starts tomorrow, and while I've survived so far by sheer smartness, most likely, I'll be eliminated tomorrow and asked to leave, just like the others who've already left. So why not pack my bag now instead of doing it tomorrow?" Quinn said as he continued, and Ryuk stood there in shock, his lips opening and closing a couple of times, trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. In the end, his hands clenched tightly into fists before slowly relaxing. He turned to Quinn before asking, "You really don't even want to give it a try, do you? Even after all my efforts and words? Your mind is still so set and sure of your failure." Ryuk's words came out almost as a whisper. Quinn chuckled as he zipped up his clothes completely, moving to the bathroom to pack his brushes and other minor items. "You see, Ryuk, after living with you for close to 24 days now, I've finally figured out what kind of person you are. You're very stubborn." "How so?" "Let me ask you a question, Ryuk," Quinn said, his voice drifting from the bathroom. "What is that?" Ryuk asked, staring at the bathroom door. Do you believe in fate? The question made Ryuk fall silent for a while. Fate? He had heard that word before from old scrap hunters, but he'd never really given it much attention. No, you don't, Quinn said, stepping out of the bathroom with a bundle of towels, a toothbrush, and some shampoo. And that's the difference between you and most of the other geniuses here. The rest of us know that the Ultimate 10 exist in this training camp. There's no way we're taking those spots from them. My belief aligns with the majority. That's why I'm already packing my bags, having very well accepted the fate of the situation. But to you, Ryuk, the word fate doesn't even exist. You believe everything is your responsibility, that everything is within your control. You think that if you work hard, you'll pass. And if you don't work hard, then you'll fail. Quinn asked as he walked out the door, holding his belongings. That is why you told me to fight back. Your belief, Ryuk, is that as long as someone fights back, that's all there is to it. But fate exists in this world, Ryuk. It does whether you like it or not. Everything happens due to fate. That all sounds like bullshit, Ryuk said, his eyes dull. Tisk, tsk. You know, I pity you, Ryuk, Quinn said suddenly, a hint of melancholy in his voice. Look at me, Ryuk. Look at every lower genius not in the top 10. We all accept fate. We all know that if we fail, it's simply due to fate. Nothing more, nothing less. But for you, Ryuk, what about you who doesn't believe in fate? What happens if you fail? You don't believe in fate, so you have no one to blame. So who else will you blame for your failure? You believe that if you work hard, you'll pass. And that automatically means if you fail, it must be because you never really worked hard enough. Isn't that your belief, Ryuk? Ryuk couldn't help but agree internally. He was training hard now because he believed that if he trained hard enough, he could defeat the Ultimate 10. But then, what if he failed? That would mean he never really trained hard enough. That must mean he had still slacked off somewhere. You have nothing to fall back on. You have no fate to blame. So in the end, you blame yourself for not trying enough, for not working hard enough. But did you really not work hard enough? I see you come back into this room every night, wincing in pain. You must have gone through a whole world of pain. How do you keep going through so much pain and rising back up the next day? Your mentality that hard work is all that's needed is flawed, Ryuk. Because what happens when you work hard only to fail in the end? Then what? You know what, Ryuk? Ha! You'd better pass the test or die trying, because I don't think you'll ever remain the same after you fail. The guilt of failure will haunt you, even in your dreams. Stalking or fate? The voice resounded through the place as Ryuk moved to the area where the plates were placed in the cafeteria. He drew out a smaller tray this time. Slowly, turning behind him, he found a beaming girl with a big smile on her face looking at him. Morgane, Ryuk asked in surprise as the girl walked forward with a sleek, mischievous grin on her face. Seems like I hit your memory hard enough for you to remember me even after so many days. That's what too much beauty does, Morgane said, and Ryuk rolled his eyes at her before walking to the area where the food was kept. He quickly served himself and walked to a seat by the side. Morgane also served her meal and came to sit at the same table. Stalking or fate, huh? I've been hearing the latter words a lot lately, Ryuk mused under his breath, but Morgane, sharp-eared as ever, picked it up. Seems like you've been going through a lot mentally, she said with a chuckle as she grabbed her fork and knife, gently cutting a morsel and placing it into her mouth. Out of familiarity, Ryuk also picked up the knife and fork and swallowed down a morsel too. Even though he had only been taught once how to use the cutlery by Morgane, he still hadn't forgotten, even after it had been so long since he last used it. Almost everyone is, Ryuk muttered to himself. Right now, even though the top 10 names struck fear in every genius's heart, there were still some who kept hope alive, igniting a faint resistance against despair in the hearts of many. Well, I definitely am not, Morgane said with a sleek smile that made Ryuk turn to stare at her for a while. Morgane seemed to pick up on that. What? Nothing much, I was just thinking it would be nice to also be one of the top 3 ultimate geniuses and never have to worry about anything too, Ryuk said with a sleek smile, and it was Morgane's turn to be shocked. How? How did you know that? She asked as Ryuk smiled knowingly without saying anything. But in his heart, he finally confirmed to himself. Morgane Dominaire. She really is one of the top 3 ultimate geniuses. Well, it seems like someone has been doing quite the amount of research. Finally, a person not scared by the Ultimate 10 label. Huh. For Fallen's sake, I have no idea who even came up with such a ridiculous name. It's a good one, Ryuk complimented, and Morgane chuckled. Don't tell me you're a fanboy of them, she said as Ryuk rolled his eyes. Fanboy? That word doesn't exist in my dictionary. I'm not. I do admire those with strength, though, because I'm starting to understand just how hard it is to truly be strong, Ryuk explained as Morgane nodded. Silence returned to the table as both quietly enjoyed their meals before Morgane eventually broke it. Tell me something, cutie barbarian, Morgane suddenly said, making Ryuk raise his head. Will you secure yourself a spot? Huh. Will you be part of the true Ultimate 10? The geniuses who managed to earn the top 10 spots in the Ascension Academy. Will you be one of them, the true Ultimate 10? Morgane asked, and Ryuk answered. Yes, I will. The answer came as swiftly as it ever could, and Morgane sat there with a bit of shock. It was the first time she had seen someone who wasn't in the Ultimate 10 affirm to themselves that they would be part of the 10. She had never seen even the slightest bit of doubt in Ryuk at all. The words had come out deep from within his heart, almost instantaneously. Such confidence surprised her but also matched with what she had heard. You know, right now, there's a rumor circulating around, Morgane suddenly said as Ryuk perked his ears. Rumors of what? Rumors of the human being a frightening monster and taking on a total of 5 fallen family geniuses head-on without breaking a sweat. Oh, and of course, you're the only human here. Many people find the comment funny, and most ignore it without thinking too much. But now, I think the rumors might actually be true. You seem like you're ready to throw everything away just to earn that spot. Hee hee. Morgane chuckled mischievously, and Ryuk shrugged. Maybe I'm just ignorant. Or delusional, he stated with a chuckle as Morgane suddenly paused for a while before responding. You know, my mother used to say a quote, which I didn't quite find inspiring. And what is that? True success only starts from the point of delusion. Now, with you sitting before me, I'm starting to believe those words. Imagine a human talking about defeating a fallen? That alone is already an ignorant statement, as a human will never defeat a fallen at the same stage of cultivation. It's so rare it's almost impossible. But now there's a human who isn't even at the plane of ascension yet, saying he would earn himself a spot held by fallen geniuses with the minimum foothold being at the core of the plane of ascension. You're essentially trying to defeat those who are a major cultivation stage above you, with more powerful racial bloodlines and abilities than yours. And yet, you so confidently claim that you'll earn a spot? Could my mother be right? Could it truly be that success only starts from the point of delusion? Morgane, seemingly speaking to herself at the end of her words, yet each word stroke at every string in Ryuk's heart. True success starts at the point of delusion, huh? That is quite an inspiring quote. Ryuk mused silently under his breath as they resumed eating their food, and this time, since they both started at the same time and Morgane's appetite is lower than Ryuk's, she finished her food earlier and waved him goodbye, leaving Ryuk alone sitting in the cafeteria. I can't afford to lose. I really can't. It arrives. Congratulations. Host has defeated a total of 20 robots at the core stage of the Plane of Ascensions. Host has earned a total of 3,200 EXP. Warning. If Host wants to survive tomorrow, the system will, for the 3rd time, call for Host to call it a day and rest. The system notification flashed before Ryuk's gaze. He knelt once more in the middle of the training room, beneath him a pool of blood filling the chasm he was in, and around him the disfigured remains of the robots scattered all across the room. Tell me, system, What could the time be? Ryuk's hoarse and scary voice rang through the room. By the system's estimation, Host has been going non-stop at it for exactly 13 hours now, and it is currently 9 p.m. in the dark of night, the system said. Ryuk nodded, remaining in his position, waiting for all his drained blood to return back to his body and his nanobots to regenerate, before finally rising back to his feet. Perhaps it was truly time to call it a day. If he injured himself too much, he might end up unable to fight during the test, defeating the purpose of all his training. "I'll stop now and rest," Ryuk said as he rose up from the chasm. Tapping on the holographics, all the robots began retreating back into the walls, soon leaving him as the only dirty organism present. Immediately, a bit of ice and snow erupted from Ryuk, wiping off the dust. Moments later, a fresh set of clothes appeared in his hands, which he quickly donned. In less than a few seconds, he was completely clean once more. Ryuk headed out of the training room. Just like yesterday, he couldn't help but notice how hollow the training area was. Nobody came at all. Many of the geniuses, like Quinn, had packed up their bags and prepared to leave, having already given up hope. Somehow, this only made the hearts of those still willing to fight feel even more steely. Ryuk, however, paid this very little mind as he made his way to the cultivation room next. He sighted the fallen lady he had met on his first day here. Over time, the woman had grown used to his presence, and she no longer bothered him or said anything as he walked past her. This time, however, she had a word for him. "You can use the rooms labeled 1 to 5 if you want. They've been doing nothing but collecting dust from disuse anyway," the woman said. Ryuk turned to look at her before bowing respectfully and entering the cultivation room. After he left, the woman turned to look at the spot he had occupied before sighing. "While I might despise those puny things called humans, I can't help but admit that your will and drive are amazing. You're the only human who has managed to enter my good graces." Ryuk chose room number 1. The moment he entered, he was shocked by the concentration of mana. It was at an unbelievably high level. Immediately, he sat down on a futon and began his meditation. While it would have normally taken him close to 30 minutes for the Ice Apex energy to begin flowing to him, in this room, it took nothing more than 10 minutes. Soon, the room was completely cold, and the frigid Ice Apex energy began infiltrating his body. Every touch of the cold made him feel incredibly alive, washing away all his injuries and pain. A small smile of peace appeared on Ryuk's face. Finally, Ryuk mused after 5 hours of repeated mana absorption. Rising to his feet, his hair had somehow turned an even paler shade of snowy white, and his lips had a frigid hue. From his previous height of 1.6 meters, he had grown to 1.8 meters, a remarkable increase due to his evolution. His body had also become more toned and muscular, a stark contrast to his formerly lean physique. Clenching his fists, the air around his grasp rumbled as if under compressed force. Veins lined Ryuk's arms as he smiled. "Now, I feel like I'm ready for the test. Activate Stats tab," he suddenly ordered in the frigid, cold room. Stats. Strength. 100. Agility. 100. Endurance. 100. Charisma. 11. Luck. Null. Mana. 50. Attribute points. 0. Through the day's intense training, Ryuk had finally managed to push most of his attribute points to the 100 mark. The power difference he felt was monumental compared to when he had been at 95. It was almost as though he had fundamentally doubled in strength. Now Ryuk was perfectly healed and in his best shape to fight. Only now could he feel his previously hammering heart calm to nothing. Immediately, he made his way out of the special cultivation room. Instead of returning to his dorm room to sleep, Ryuk stopped before a large gate. Suddenly, he tapped his leg on the ground, soaring straight 10 meters into the air and landing atop the skyscraper in a single leap. Such a feat would have been incomprehensible for the previous Ryuk. Yet, for the current Ryuk, there wasn't even a change in his expression after performing it. Sitting at the top of the dorm skyscraper, Ryuk did nothing but stare into the starry night sky, which occasionally dazzled with shooting stars blazing across the heavens. The sight gave the entire night sky an otherworldly aura of beauty. The air gently blew across the top of the skyscraper, ruffling Ryuk's snow-white hair. "Hey, system!" Ryuk suddenly called out as the blue light at the corner of his eyes magnified. "What is it, host?" "Just how weak am I?" he asked jokingly. He recalled his first training session with the fallen geniuses and how easily he had been left behind. Back then, when he asked the system how weak he was, the reply had been, "Host really is weak." But now, Host has grown stronger. A lot stronger. The reply came as quite the surprise to Ryuk as he sat down, as if he had just seen a ghost. And then the system screen faded away, a bit of a peaceful smile coming to appear on Ryuk's face moments later. "Thank you," he responded as he turned to keep looking at the dark streets, his gaze occasionally flashing to the beautiful twilight in the sky. Somehow, Ryuk doubted there was a place in this world with an even more beautiful twilight than the eclipsed Citadel City. "My heart feels so light today. Things seem so peaceful now. The pressure is gone. Win or lose, it's almost like a factor that doesn't even exist at all. You know, system, many times, I have imagined this night and seen myself training all through the night, crumbling under the pressure. But here I am, stargazing at the night, even though I know well the test begins tomorrow." Ryuk mused silently, taking a deep inhale with closed eyes and exhaling loudly. Perhaps, Host has settled himself to fate. The system butted in as Ryuk smiled, the reply causing him to remember the earlier conversations he had with Quinn in the morning. "It is not that I don't believe in fate. Perhaps I just believe there is good and bad fate, and that if I work hard enough I'll get the good one. The only reason I am different is that I don't believe fate is stamped in stone. I just believe it is a coin. The head is what you get if you try and become successful. The tail is what you get if you fail and become unsuccessful. I believe in fate, and I believe that my fate will be good. I will win a spot, make old Jack's efforts worth it, find a way to grow even stronger and quicker when I reach the Ascension Academy, and try to find the star that I was birthed from. I'll take back everything dear to me and obtain back what is rightfully mine." Has Host just recited out loud his own fate? The system asked, and Ryuk couldn't help but chuckle. But then the system panel never left, as if waiting for an answer, and Ryuk nodded. Yes, I have. That is my fate," Ryuk called out. Even if not with supreme confidence, at least he had a goal and a vision for how he wanted his life to play out. It was something most people in the world barely have these days. Then, Host's fate will play out just as Host imagines, the system assured before disappearing. Silence reigned in at the tip of the skyscraper, the only sound being Ryuk's shirt flapping in the gentle wind. Eventually, Ryuk closed his eyes as he dived into his pet world. At the center of the pet world, there was still the small white rock, covered completely in various runic lines. Calmly, Ryuk stepped forward toward it, his hand trailing along the runic lines as he looked at Isha. His eyes narrowed before relaxing. "Is it just me, or has your aura grown even stronger too?" Ryuk couldn't help but ask, as he looked at Isha with loving eyes. The little ice serpent was still in its deep slumber. Even though it was just a few hours now before the test, Ryuk didn't feel the need to wake up Isha forcefully. If the little guy managed to wake up before then, he would be glad. If not, Ryuk would have no choice but to go through the test alone, just like how he had been training himself alone all these days. Isha's appearance didn't really change the cards much for Ryuk. Even though Isha was a secret card that he had planned to use for the test to take the geniuses by surprise, he also didn't think it would be impossible for him to win without Isha. His companions were a major help to him, but Ryuk would never become dependent on them. That was part of his beliefs and promises. "Grow, Isha, grow. Even though I would love for you to help me out in the test, your growth matters more," Ryuk whispered, and he couldn't help but notice Isha's runes brighten with a blue light as Ryuk slowly raised his hands from it before disappearing from the pet world, leaving the ice serpent in its peaceful slumber. Eventually, time passed quickly, and through the duration of the night, Ryuk stayed at the top of the skyscraper, his gaze never once leaving the beautiful starlight of the sky. That was until the announcement rang out through the entire training grounds. Announcement! Every genius is to head into the assembly ground of Hall 5 in the next 3 hours or face automatic disqualification. The announcement rang out a total of 3 times, and Ryuk finally took his gaze off the sky before walking back into the building. It's finally beginning, huh? Those were his last thoughts as he disappeared from the top of the skyscraper. Just like previously, the assembly hall was teeming with various fallen family geniuses. But unlike previous times, when everyone was so loud, this time, the only thing that could be heard was the sound of footsteps. Somehow, the students seemed to want to keep an aura of silence in the area. On arriving, Ryuk discovered that even the instructors were already seated, seemingly waiting for them all. It was clear to all that they were taking all of this pretty seriously, and that created more comfort for Ryuk than ever. That at least showed he had been training for something worthwhile. If they didn't take it seriously, wouldn't it also mean all of his efforts weren't worth the pain? 3 hours quickly passed, and this time, a total of 40 students were seated in the hall. Calmly, an instructor rose to his feet, ascending to the podium with his gaze scanning the crowd below him, as everything went absolutely silent. Welcome, fallen family geniuses, to the semi-final test. The instructor who walked out was a man with short silvery hair and the same silvery eyes. Particles of silver rotated in his eyes, like a black hole, and his gaze held an incredibly piercing power. Ryuk felt all the hairs on his skin stand as the man's simple stare bore into him. Somehow, he could sense the man's gaze lingering around him with furrowed eyebrows, perhaps intrigued by Ryuk not being a fallen but human. The previous preliminary test had a total of 20 of you eliminated. That leaves just 40 of you present in this room. Sir Thornhill began, immediately getting to the point of the matter at hand. This semi-final test will also eliminate another 20 people, leaving only 20 of you to move on to the finals. In the final stage, a total of 10 will be eliminated, and the remaining 10 standing will be the ones to ascend this time. In the previous test, the rules had been more lax, allowing some of you to apply your smarts to win easily. For those of you who succeeded with your wits in the last test, let me say this, you'll be disappointed. This semi-final test will be based on nothing but your pure combat abilities. The mode of competition is simple, a tiered one-on-one battle. A pure elimination style based solely on your individual battle prowess, the man declared with a clenched fist as the air around him crackled fiercely. You all, 40 in the room, will be paired together at random and transported into a realm where only one of you will return conscious. Getting knocked out will automatically trigger the realm to transport you out, making you the automatic loser. The second way to lose is to be exposed to an attack capable of taking your life. At the moment your life is in danger, the realm will intervene and transport you out within 0.1 seconds. Of course, this also makes you the automatic loser. This means 2 things. Both fighters can go absolutely all out, aiming for each other's lives. There's no such thing as giving up. Only the most brutal dominator will win this phase of the match. There will be 0 mercy observed. And to top it all off, you only have an hour for every battle. If both of you fail to knock the other unconscious after an hour of fighting, then both of you will lose. There will be no win-win situation or draw. It'll be all or nothing. That is a win or a loss. I believe I can't make myself any clearer, the man said, his gaze scanning through the room. The thickness and pressure of his words were suffocating for most of the geniuses. If everyone is paired at random, that means there's an element of luck involved in this match. What if a ranked 40 is paired with a ranked number 1? Wouldn't it be obvious who the loser would be? Fallen Rohan here will pair you all based on her random card abilities, the man announced before retreating backward. A fallen lady stepped onto the stage, raising her hands as a total of 40 cards appeared in them. Immediately, the cards twisted around randomly with incredible speed before slowing down. A card appeared in front of each genius. Slowly, they all stretched out their hands to pick the cards. Ryuk sighed as he saw the number on his card. 18. Almost like a mysterious force, A purple light shone into the sky, but it wasn't only from Ryuk. The same light shone from a boy sitting at the front. As if attracted by this mysterious force, both of them instantly turned their gazes toward each other, their eyes falling on the numbers on their cards. Ryuk immediately saw the number 18 on the boy's card, and the same could be said for the fallen genius, who glanced at Ryuk before exhaling in relief. Thankfully, I got paired with the human. This should be a smooth entrance to the final round, the boy said with a smile of relief. I believe you're all aware of who your opponents are now, aren't you? The woman asked. Some of the geniuses exhaled in relief after being matched with much weaker opponents, while others almost broke down in tears, especially those unfortunately paired with the top 10. Since you all have your opponents, then, the fallen lady said. At her insistence, Ryuk watched as his card exploded, forming a door right in front of him. The same thing occurred for everyone in the hall as doors began appearing all around. The door in front of you will transport you to the domain where you will find your paired opponents standing. Leave them unconscious within the hour time frame, and you automatically win. Everything is allowed. Weapons, abilities, tricks, unfair fights. Everything is allowed. Feel free to go all out. The fallen lady summarized the rules once more. Without wasting any time, Ryuk rose up and stepped through the door with a calm composure, being the first to disappear from the room. Quickly, all the geniuses began entering their respective doors, and immediately, silence covered the room. The instructors wore varying evil smiles on their faces. Now, let the semi-final stage truly begin. When Ryuk opened his eyes, he found himself standing in a deserted land, with desert sand sprawling all over the area. Harsh gales meandered through the sandy plains. The entire world before him was laid bare, with no place to hide. Everything could be observed from anywhere. Looking up at the sky, it was a smooth blue color with a blazing sun shining directly overhead. Slowly, Ryuk turned his gaze behind him and found his opponent, who looked him up and down before laughing out loud. Lucky me to get paired with the trash human. Unfortunately for you, you can't give up. But if you stay in one spot, I'll make sure to knock you unconscious as gently as possible. Hee. Another arrogant one? Ryuk thought to himself as he looked at the fallen before him. He was a burly individual, the same height as Ryuk, 1.8 meters, but around twice as thick, filled with an incredible amount of fat. His huge tummy could be seen poking out from his dark green robes. His hair was short and dark, paired with piercing black eyes, and right now, there was a cocky smile on his face as he dramatically cracked his fingers while staring at Ryuk with a sadistic smile. Let me ask, who are you? Ryuk asked as the boy smiled disdainfully while slowly stepping forward toward him. I am Selim Aegis of the Lost Fallen family of the Celestial Aegis. Number 18 ranked on the Fallen Genius ranking. The boy called out as Ryuk's eyes furrowed for a while. One from the 12 lost families, and also ranked number 18. Good. Ryuk called out as he also stepped forward toward the boy, a small smile slowly settling on his face. Ha! Selim couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the human stepping forth toward him. He had expected the human to know well of his own weaknesses and turn the battle into a chase to exhaust an hour from him, making both of them lose. Yet here he was, stepping forth toward him with supreme confidence. Arriving 5 meters away from the young man, Ryuk paused as his upper body slowly leaned forward and his eyes became steely cold and sharp. You're worth hunting down, Selim. What? Boom! The entire desert land beneath Ryuk shook fiercely, a rumble echoing as the sand was immediately pushed back like a tsunami. Immediately, he pierced forth like a bullet with incredible speed that led to a sharp whistling sound in the air. In less than 0.5 seconds, he was right before Selim's face, his punch magnifying endlessly and smashing straight into the young man's face. Immediately, Selim felt his feet leave the ground, and in an instant, he was hurled forth like a bullet. Shockwaves rippled from his impact as he slammed into the ground at a far distance, skidding uncontrollably before disappearing from Ryuk's gaze. Immediately, Ryuk faded away once more, becoming a blur of light that chased in the distance. Boom! 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 The desert land gave in as Selim smashed into it repeatedly, slowly dragging himself to a stop, tearing his face off the golden sand. Rain of blood dripping down from his bursted lips. What just happened? He choked out when he felt repeated shockwaves emanating forth. Ryuk's image morphed, magnified terrifyingly with his incredible speed, a maniacal and deranged smile on his face. Do you not understand, Selim? You're a mutated beast, and now I'm hunting you down. In less than 5 seconds, Ryuk was in the scope of attacks as a kick blasted forth with speed, tearing apart the air and slamming forth with incredible momentum towards Selim. Tisich, don't make me laugh. Selim roared out in anger as his dark hair flared with an abyssal dark light, and in the next instant, just a few centimeters before Ryuk's foot slammed into his chest, a gigantic shield appeared in Ryuk's path. Ryuk's foot slammed into it with full power, but a shocking scene occurred as Ryuk's face changed under the suddenness. Boom! A figure was sent instantly rolling with horrifying speed, slamming into the ground and carving a massive crater into the earth before slowly coming to a stop. The figure was none other than Ryuk, and immediately he turned to look at his foot, finding some parts of his skin torn and some of his blood vessels having ruptured apart. We of the Celestial Aegis control a shield that can reflect back all attacks. The stronger your attacks are, the more you will suffer, fool. Selim cackled evilly as he slowly walked forth from the distance. His gaze caught Ryuk's right foot, which had been absolutely decimated, and he couldn't help but smile. That was one body part out of the way, making the fight easier. But his face changed in the next instant when he watched as all the blood oozing out from Ryuk's leg suddenly began floating in the air and re-entering Ryuk's veins, which quickly mended themselves. A strange metallic sheen covered up Ryuk's leg, and instantly all former wounds disappeared. Ryuk tapped his foot twice on the ground, sending golden sand flying around the area. You! Impossible! You've healed so fast, Selim said in shock, but an even greater shock appeared when Ryuk's right sleeve was blown apart and an object soon appeared in Ryuk's hand. It was a gigantic scythe radiating a dark mist and brimming with an aura of death. Immediately, Ryuk soared forward once more with his speed, appearing before Selim before he could blink. Just a meter away, Ryuk disappeared from his gaze, and Selim instantly turned above his head to find Ryuk's humongous scythe's shadow covering his entire body. Fool! You don't learn, do? Selim said with a smirk as his dark shield manifested in the air above him. Boom! An incredible amount of shockwaves and energy rolled out from the point of collision, quickly followed by the sound. Crack! 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 What? Impossible! Selim roared in shock, his face turning pale. Right now, his shield was cracking under the scythe's power, cracks slowly spreading on its surface. Immediately, Selim shot backward as the glass-like shield completely shattered, with Ryuk's scythe nailing into the ground, carving a 3-meter deep long line into the earth. Immediately, Ryuk soared after Selim, his humongous scythe slashing forth horizontally and sending a dark beam of energy towards Selim, who instantly clasped his hands together, another shield appearing before him, only to be severed in the next instant. Immediately, Selim dipped his hand into his robe and frantically tore out cards, flinging them into the air. Activate light beam cards, he ordered aloud as the cards instantly arrayed forward toward Ryuk, forming a dome around him. In the next instant, golden lights pierced out from the center of the cards, all aiming toward Ryuk, turning the entire world into an incredibly bright daylight of destructive fallen light energy. Boom! 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 With every inch of space around him covered by destructive beams of energy, Ryuk reacted instantly. Activate Frost Veil. Immediately, the world turned to that of rigid ice as all other beams instantly paused in their path. Yet, they were still strong enough to speed forward toward Ryuk a bit later, albeit slower than before. But that delay was all Ryuk needed. His scythe flashed forward with speed around his body, ripping apart all the beams of energy and instantly carving an open path. He burst out of the dome of beams, the entire area around him exploding as the beams smashed into the ground, sending a mushroom of energy across the skies. Selim watched as the mushroom of energy slowly quieted down, and he couldn't help but think, perhaps I have overdone it. But quickly, just as the thought came, it was thrown out the window as Selim watched a figure slowly step out of the mushroom of energy, his humongous scythe dragging down behind him on the golden sand. He survived that? I take back my words. Ryuk's voice resounded from the distance, yet his figure was already flashing forth with speed. He appeared once more before Aegis, his scythe cleaving down. Aegis instantly clasped forth his palm, a shield appearing and blocking the strike. But in the next instant, Ryuk faded away as he appeared by the side of Aegis, his knee crashing forth and slamming into Aegis's left ribs, sending the chubby guy flying away into the distance. Once more, Ryuk picked up his fallen scythe and tightly followed. Your ability is truly an amazing one. It can block attacks and also reflect them back. But unfortunately, you are matched with me, who possesses the Nano Reaper. You see, my little scythe here just so happens to possess the ability to draw away Apex energy from Apex energy constructs and use it to strengthen itself. All my scythe needed to do was draw away the Apex energy that made your shield so durable and unbreakable. It devours the energy for its strength, and as a result, your shield weakens over time, while the scythe itself becomes sharper. Eventually, your shield runs out of power, and my scythe grows sharp enough to sever your unbreakable shield. Ryuk said this as he arrived above Aegis, and once more, he cleaved down the scythe as Aegis hurriedly conjured a shield, only for it to get instantly cleaved apart, this time even faster than previously. Ryuk's fist smashed straight into Aegis's face, burying his head into the ground. Immediately, Aegis flung up a card, as a beam of energy erupted outward toward Ryuk, who placed his scythe before him, blocking the beam but also getting pushed back. Selim used the opportunity to retreat far away, panting, with an expression of disbelief on his face as he watched Ryuk calmly landed onto the ground. Because of your belief that your shield is unbreakable, you have relied on it to the point of ignoring your own battle abilities. In short, you're a poor combat fighter. That's why you opt to use light beams to attack. Your shield is useless against me, if anything, only strengthening my scythe, and your light beams can't really do much damage anyway. So, can you feel it, Selim? Your own defeat, Ryuk asked with an indifferent gaze. But right now, the same could not be said for Selim. Right now, his entire mental state had been thrown into disarray. The only ones who should be able to crack open his shield were those at the peak of the plane of ascension with an extraordinary attack power or those at the plane of dominion. This was what had made Selim incredibly confident in his ability, and even in his heart, he had believed he would be able to match an ultimate 10 to a draw and, if lucky, even win against them. His shield was supreme and invincible. It had never been broken. That was his ultimate ability. For this, he had focused all of his training on being able to summon his shield faster as his combat focus. He never bothered to really learn how to fight because he believed none could get past his defense. But then he faced this monster, one whose scythe could absorb the energy from his shield and use it to strengthen itself. His shield, which he had relied on so heavily, was now useless, and even severed with single slashes. His light beams, which he had kept to give the final stroke of defeat to his enemies, had not much effect on the youth. Now what? His defense was useless, his attacks were useless. His own defeat? Wasn't it as clear as day? I'll be defeated. Impossible. Impossible. Selim said as the entire world seemed to become blurry. Now he felt an incredible fear radiating from within him. I'll lose to this trashy human? How do I explain that to my proud father? How do I explain it to my family? How? How can I lose to a trashy human? No, I won't lose. No, I won't lose. Selim screamed out as he stared back in front of him, hundreds of cards pouring out of his robes. He prepared to fling them outward toward Ryuk, but then Ryuk wasn't at his front anymore. You fell for it. Ryuk. In the next instant, Selim stood in shock as he felt the end of a scythe slice through his right shoulder, blood splashing out violently as his entire right arm was instantly cleaved off. What? In the same instant, a heavy force slammed into Aegis's back, as he was sent erratically flying away from the place, smashing to the ground and sent flying into the air. Right above him in the air was none other than Ryuk, whose gigantic scythe flashed forward with frightening speed. Selim hastily flung the card in his left hand upward. Immediately, destructive rays of energy erupted forth, piercing toward Ryuk. But Ryuk made no effort to avoid it as the light beam carved straight into his body, but with him still following up with his attack. Selim watched as the scythe inched closer and closer toward his neck, and then, rip! The entire world around them cracked to pieces as Aegis collapsed onto his back, his hand firmly grasping his throat, which was slowly oozing with blood. A thin red line formed. Winner of the match, Ryuk! The fallen lady's cold announcement rang throughout the room as Selim turned in shock to look at Ryuk, who was standing just a few feet beside him. You lost, Selim, Ryuk reminded him before stepping away from him, heading to his seat. How? Those were Selim's last thoughts before his consciousness darkened, and he fell to the ground, blood oozing out of his right shoulder, as he was soon taken away from the hall by an instructor. You can head that way if you're injured and need healing. The tiny voice echoed out from a fallen lady who stared long at the holes on Ryuk's body. Only now did Ryuk remember, at the last second, he had refused to block all of the card attacks, in exchange for cleaving off Selim's head, and that had been enough for a few holes to appear on his body. But it wasn't that serious, as Ryuk could feel his own injuries rapidly closing. He waved calmly at her before edging toward the seats and taking a place. His eyes couldn't help but scan the area, and Ryuk noticed a few things. All of the Ultimate 10 are done with their opponents before me. Right now, the front row of the hall still contained the 10 seats, and a total of 10 fallen geniuses were already sitting on it, seemingly waiting for the next round. Counting the number of people around, Ryuk discovered he was number 12 currently in the room, meaning he was the second to finish his fights quickly. A few gazes were drawn onto him, from the instructors and even the top 10 themselves, as they looked at the unconscious Selim by the side, who was busy with treatment. It seemed they all were aware of the young man's ability, as they looked at him while murmuring, "Impossible." The human progressed to the next round and defeated Selim Aegis. Selim might possess no real combat ability, but he is still one of the top 12 lost families regarded. Their mighty skill, reflecting shield, makes them almost invincible. Even if Selim were to be defeated, it would take a pretty long time, and somehow the human was able to easily defeat him, and so quickly too. He didn't seem to suffer that much from fighting Selim either. Just how is that possible? The various murmurs were quiet, but with Ryuk's sharp ears, he was able to easily pick everything up, even though he remained motionless to everything. Not long after, another student appeared, and then another, until there were a total of 20 seated in the hall. Ryuk couldn't help but notice that this time, Quinn wasn't sitting amongst them. It didn't take long for Ryuk to find him, as he was among the currently hospitalized students who had been injured and lost. The state Quinn was in now wasn't very bad, but he was unconscious, and Ryuk could see the few lines on his body, as if a blade had been carved into his skin. It was slowly healing up, but it was so bad, Ryuk's heart shook, and his eyes couldn't help but settle on one of the top 10 in the seat, and soon narrow out the figure who could be responsible. His answer came as fast as possible. A short fallen genius of about 1.7 meters in height, oozing with an incredibly sharp blade aura. That must have been the work of Darius Crescent. He muttered to himself silently as he looked at the back of Darius before eventually taking his gaze away. Somehow, Ryuk didn't feel much for the state that Quinn had been reduced to. This was a competition and the rules had been made clear. They all vied for a spot, and it didn't matter how they proceeded. Badly beating up the opponent and cases of torture like the one Quinn had seemingly faced were all allowed. In the end, the only thing that could be blamed was their strength. If Quinn had taken his growth seriously, perhaps he wouldn't have been reduced to such a pathetic state. There was no need to take revenge for him or even any mention of revenge at all. They all were just trying to win and with all processes allowed. I hope he gets well soon. He prayed, the only thing he could do, as all of the injured students began getting weaved out of the hall, leaving just the remaining 20 geniuses seated. Congratulations to the 20 of you who are still sitting down before me. You have all successfully completed the semifinal stage of the choosing and qualified to be in the final selection. Just like before, the rules are the same. You all will pick up your cards and fight against a random opponent. There are some of you who are still injured from your previous fights, so the final test will not immediately begin now but early in the day after tomorrow. But still, your choosing will be made now, so you become aware of which opponent you will be fighting in the next round. The man said, as the fallen lady stretched out her hand once more, and just like before, cards appeared in the air, a total of 20, before rapidly weaving randomly amongst each other and floating to the top of every genius head. With hearts loudly hammering in their chests, all of the geniuses moved their hands at the same time to pluck up a card, and Ryuk was no exception. But when Ryuk saw the name on his card, his heart shook fiercely, furiously pumping within his chest as his eyes dilated uncontrollably. On the card was the singular number 1, and immediately, Ryuk's eyes snapped forward as he found the person already looking at him with a smirk. It was none other than the number 1 genius of the Ultimate Geniuses, the one who had been the first to complete the semifinal test. Ignatius Blade. The human will be my opponent. Ha 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 ha. Ignatius himself called out loud as all of the geniuses turned their shocked gaze to Ryuk, with some of them looking at him in pity while others simply clicked their tongues at his unluckiness. Somehow, he just had to pair up with the strongest of the Ultimate Geniuses. Well, at least we already know Ignatius will be earning himself a spot either way. The result wouldn't have changed much if it was any of the geniuses either. Perhaps Morgaine or Calidor would have been able to do something, but then the chances of them pairing up are too low and now non-existent. This is just fate in the making. This time, it was the top Ultimate 10 that were making the announcements, causing Ryuk's eyes to narrow even more. TCH. In 2 days from now, the finals will begin. A total of 10 of you will be challenging 10 others, and the ultimate winner of each round will be the true Ultimate 10. Those who will be allowed to secure the spot to the Ascension Academy. There will be 10 winners, never more, never less. Also, you all must take notice that, unlike your previous battles, where it took place in a secret domain, this battle will be recorded live in a battle stadium, attended by every instructor and every fallen genius here. And most importantly, it will be watched live by some of the most powerful powerhouses of the fallen family. These are existences that can define whether your life will be a smooth upward spiral, a single ascension to the heavens, or just an ordinary life. For those of you who fought hard and managed to catch the eye of a supreme powerhouse, you will be handsomely rewarded and can even be personally nurtured by them, even if you lose the fight. But of course, a winner is more pleasing to the eye than a talented loser. So very well, a choice must be made. Will you, in 2 days from now, become a winner, secure yourself a spot in the Ascension Academy, and earn extra rewards? Or will you become a talented loser, lose the spot to the Academy, and leave your fate in the hands of others noticing you and recognizing your talents? Something is not guaranteed. Well, you all have 2 days to make the choice. As for the result of your choice, I will say we will be seeing it 2 days from now. I must warn you all, any fights from now, or targeting or bullying, is absolutely and strictly forbidden. If you are caught trying to gravely injure another to render them incapable of the fights, then your punishment will be forfeiting the match and being the loser automatically, without any fights whatsoever. For these 2 days, all opponents must steer clear of each other, and no one must physically hurt the other. No sparring with anyone is allowed. If you want to spar, spar with the robots. Any disobedience to this rule is an automatic disqualification. I hope you all very well receive my warnings, the man said, this time pretty seriously as all the geniuses nodded their heads. Good then, see you all in 2 days from now, the man said, his gaze skipping by Ryuk's figure before all of the instructors disappeared from the hall, and the students all began leaving. But still, it wasn't until every one of them gave him a sorry glance before leaving. Eventually, the door to the hall slammed closed, leaving none but Ryuk alone on the seat. Sigh! A clear sigh rang out through the training room as Ryuk slowly opened his eyes, looking at the white ceiling above him. "Hey, system!" he suddenly called out. "Yes, host. Tell me, am I not supposed to be celebrating my win of the semi-final test and oozing with supreme confidence? Then how come I feel so empty in my heart?" The reason is simple, and host's feelings are true. Host truly ought to celebrate his ability to defeat the top 20 ranked in a fair battle. But then, Host happens to be unluckily matched with the number 1 Ultimate Genius, with close to 0 perceived chances of winning. That is the reason for Host's somberness. The system replied like a true therapist, and Ryuk's eyes boringly looked at the side of the wall. Truth be said, I never really calculated much the estimate and possibility of fighting Ignatius. I had thought I would see him in action, but I never really thought I would be fighting him personally one-on-one. This is truly out of the blue, Ryuk mused with a bit of worry in his eyes. He had been able to confirm his suspicions. Ignatius Blade is the most powerful Ultimate Genius. He was an opponent that could make even Ryuk feel his pulse increase. The thought of fighting the boastful monster of the geniuses had never crossed Ryuk's mind at all. But here he was, having nothing but 2 days to prepare to fight the Ultimate Genius. But still, it's not like I'm completely helpless either. Right now, I can guess that based on my pure combat power alone, I should have no problem fighting a top 10 Ultimate Genius to a standstill. But pure combat power alone wouldn't be enough to beat the top 3, let alone the top 1 Ultimate Genius. From what I have gathered about Ignatius myself, his flames are searing hot, so much so they turn everything they touch into ashes. Severing his hands to stop him from channeling his power wouldn't be an easy feat, since I have no doubt Ignatius will also be very well aware of his own weaknesses, and all his combat training would have been to prevent that from happening. And apart from his hot flames, I have no idea of any skills that he might possess. Obviously, it can't be only flames. Besides, his flames are a direct counter to my Frost Veil, and he would most likely be able to ignore its effects with the crazy gap between both of our cultivation levels. So, the only thing I have that might even injure him is my Nano Scythe. In short, to defeat Ignatius, I would need more than battle ability and my unbelievable regeneration. That gives me chances for my ultimate cards to finally show up, Ryuk said with seriousness. Of course, Ryuk had kept up as many cards as he could ever since day 1 of training for this test. One of those ultimate top cards was Isha, who he had still yet to reveal, and his other trump card was his Nano Transformation. One that strikes fear into Ryuk's own heart, stopping him from activating the technique and seeing what it can do. If there was one thing he knew for sure, it would be that it would be hard for anyone to face him once he activates that technique, even though he himself might suffer grievous wounds in exchange. There's not much training I can do in 2 days, nor much improvement that I can make. So, in the end, I can only hope Isha wakes up in 2 days from now, and if all breaks loose, I'll activate the Nano Transformation technique and bring an end to everything. You all think this battle's result has already been set in stone, Ryuk said with a sinister smirk as he chuckled evilly. TCH, I'll shock you all in the final test. Ignatius Blade. Our fight will be legendary.